This video is going to be addressing part of a recent Social Sessions interview on YouTube, where guest Sandra Lean is asked about the trial transcripts in Luke Mitchell's case. We're going to be listening to the claims made about the transcripts and breaking these down.
I will ask you a couple of harder questions, right? So these are the questions that I got when Scott came on, right, and said I took it easy on Scott. What is this with the transcripts and saying that you never gave transcript? What is all this about?
So there's a couple of different aspects to this. We might as well cover the whole thing so that we'll put it to bed once and for all. I had all the case papers in Luke's case, all the defence papers, including the transcripts that the defence had.
She says here that she had all of the transcripts that the defence had. We know that she doesn't have all of the transcripts because not all of the evidence has been transcribed. She has the transcripts of evidence that the defence specifically requested to get transcribed. We'll come back to why this is relevant.
But my advice, legal advice, in all the years I had those papers was that I cannot make them public.
Aye, definitely.
Just like a solicitor holding papers can't make them public.
Any lawyer would
that was
tell
the
you
first thing. Secondly, the ability to get transcripts and the cost were ridiculous. So in Scotland, you had to give the reasons why you wanted transcripts, and they had to agree that that was a valid reason.
No, I remember going through it on my appeal and stuff. I remember it.
So when I was asked about the transcripts and whether we could raise money and everything else, that was the response I gave. That was the response that I had always been told was the case, had always believed to be the case.
She says here that she'd always been told they couldn't be shared with the public. But last October, in an interview with podcaster Bob Ruff, she said she'd found legislation stating they weren't available to the public just the other day.
Actually on the list because it only just came up in the last couple of days. And that was, you remember at the very beginning, you asked about the availability of transcripts in Scotland and the cost.
Yes.
And I found just the other day the transcripts of criminal proceedings in Scotland order, which specifies that the court will only allow release of transcripts if satisfied that the person requesting the transcript is a person who falls within a specified class of person and intends to use it for a specified purpose only.
Although this has been covered many times before, and at this point it's almost like trying to convince someone that the grass is green and not purple, there is another act that she fails to mention. The 1995 Act, which was in place before Luke's conviction, allows any member of the public to apply for transcripts in Scotland. They are considered public documents unless the evidence was closed court, which Luke's trial was not, and the court have confirmed that. What is odd is that, despite making many points in regards to the transcripts, Sandra never seems to mention or even acknowledge the Criminal Procedure Scotland Act 1995. Let's have a look at what it says. This Act allows anyone who is not a person convicted at trial to apply under this section of the Act to obtain a copy of a transcript for any part of the proceedings that has been held in open court. Open court is a court or trial to which members of the public can freely attend, which Luke's case was.
And just to back that up, in May 2023, the Justice Committee in the Scottish Parliament discussed the question of why transcripts were so difficult and so expensive to get. And then some people who'd at one point been part of the sort of main support group and had broken away claimed that they'd gone and got transcripts with absolute ease for pennies.
This one is actually pretty simple, and it's interesting that Sandra is surprised by the costs. It was explained by the court that if evidence has already been transcribed, then only the cost of copying the document is required. You can find costs of copying fees on the court's website. As we have previously heard, some of the evidence from Luke's trial has already been transcribed, meaning that only the cost of copying the document was required to obtain it. Other evidence that hadn't been transcribed previously, that was recently paid for, did not incur the costs that Sandra Lean has previously claimed. In the Bob Ruff podcast, she said it would cost way over the £60,000 mark to get them all. This is incredibly far from the truth, so of course those claims were questioned.
and used that to claim that I'd been lying about the transcripts being expensive and the transcripts being difficult to get.
I do want to say that the people who first mentioned buying the transcripts didn't ask Sandra for her opinion, didn't ask her to release the copies that she had. But when she found out this was being discussed, she decided to address it on the podcast and tell us that they were impossible to obtain and that the costs were extremely high, both of which have been proven to be false.
No, well, I can definitely assure you that that's the case.
Well, as I said, May 23, they're actually having a discussion. The Justice Committee are having a discussion about it. So this is where it started. Is that I'd been dishonest about it, but then they twisted that to say that what I'd said in the book, the transcripts proved that the book was dishonest. Well, Innocence Betrayed in the opening chapter says, I'm going to tell you the story of all the information that was never before a jury, that was never in the public domain. Well, that means that what was in court was before the jury, wasn't it?
Aye.
And what I'm saying is, and what I said in the book, and what I said in the introduction is, what was said in court was not the truth. A lot of the witnesses did not tell the truth. So I've now lied about how difficult it is to get transcripts. Those transcripts now prove that I've lied in the book as well. Nobody's actually pointed out where these lies are or what these lies are, because they can't.
Yes, we can, and we have. She completely avoids the point here. The discrepancies that have been pointed out mostly have nothing to do with statements. They are differences between what Sandra said happened at trial and what actually happens at the trial. These points do not require us to see hidden statements that only she has access to. For example, her book claimed that Jodie's grandmother, when asked at trial how she knew to go to the path, responded with, "We just did." We can see from the transcripts that she never at any point said this. No statements required because we're talking about what was said at trial. She also states in her book that witness Lorraine Fleming, when asked to identify Luke in court, said that his head looked completely different, when in fact the witness never said this. This particular witness did identify him, but it's not mentioned in her book at all. Again, this is about what was said at the trial, nothing to do with statements. She also claims that Luke's brother did not admit to watching porn, that the porn was connected to pop-ups on his computer. The prosecution used Luke's brother watching porn on the computer as proof that his brother wasn't home, because his brother said he wouldn't have watched porn if he thought that Luke was in the house. Sandra continues to try and say that the witness did not admit to any such thing, that he was pressured. This is her interpretation of the evidence, which outright contradicts that which was said by the witness himself. Yet she continues to state it as a fact, even though she wasn't present at the trial herself and has no relationship with that witness. And again, as we can see, there is zero need to have any access to statements given prior to the trial, because we're talking about what was said at the trial itself. In regards to statements though, some of Luke's statements were actually read out during the trial, so we have had access to some statements in that sense, and some of them contradict what Sandra says in her book. For example, Sandra says in her book that the call register on Luke's phone was deleted while it was in the hands of the police. When Luke's statements were read out at trial during police testimony, we can see, however, that that isn't the case. His statements clearly say that he deleted the call register himself in case he accidentally made an outgoing call. So here you could say that we have something that was said in a statement that is now publicly available, but Sandra's never addressed that difference. She hasn't said that she has a statement from Luke where he says otherwise, and if that is the case, why did he say to police that he did delete it? Why has she claimed in her book that the police deleted it? That still needs answered, but she doesn't answer any of those questions. Just continues to say, well, you haven't seen the statements, so the transcripts are irrelevant. Again, statements have nothing to do with these discrepancies, and where statements are involved, there has been no explanation for the differences there either. There is a video on this which I will link below, but notice how there is no acknowledgement of the individual discrepancies or differences that have been pointed out. She just comes back with, well, you haven't seen the statements, I've got the statements, you haven't seen them, you don't know what you're talking about. That's pretty much what she's saying.
The information in the book is, they said this in court, here's what they said in statements. The transcripts don't cover the statements.
How did other people manage to get the transcripts?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, I have no idea.
At this point, I'm pretty much running out of words. I don't think there's much more I can say, other than how does a criminologist not know about a Criminal Proceedings Act from 1995?
I do believe there may have been access through different routes. I don't know what those would be.
The 1995 Act.
But certainly, I have no idea where they got them from.
The court, it's not like we just went out and found them in a skip.
What I do know is, and I did say at the time, it's almost like they're being played for fools here.
I don't know enough about the case to say it, but that's all that I can see, right? To me, you just need to watch the documentary. You can read Sandra's book, No Smoke, and you get to see...
Sorry, just to interrupt you there. No Smoke's out of print at the minute. It's Innocence Betrayed that's available.
So Innocence Betrayed, you can watch these things for yourself.
And there we have it. You can read Innocence Betrayed for yourself, and you can watch the documentary for yourself, but you shouldn't read the transcripts though. And you shouldn't look anywhere else for information for yourself, because it's not important, and we should completely trust Sandra Lean. We don't need to look elsewhere to find out what evidence got Luke convicted, or to find out what was said at trial that resulted in this alleged miscarriage of justice. Don't look at that, doesn't matter. So thank you for watching this video, and really though, if anybody does try to prevent you from doing your own research, it really is a red flag. Look at the information, make up your own mind, but don't let anybody prevent you from doing that. Thank you for watching.
I do believe there may have been access through different